So I've had a few people request a video on the Bulls salary cap situation going into this offseason, and I've touched on the Bulls cap space, cap expectations, free agency, and the potential targets the Bulls should look at to go into this offseason. But my response whenever someone has asked me on making a video explaining how the NBA salary cap works and how things will shape up for the Bulls going into next season, I always say, well, to be honest, the salary cap is pretty complicated, and I'll admit I myself don't follow all of the ins and outs of how the salary cap works as it pertains to the luxury tax, mid-level exceptions, stretch provisions. I have a general understanding of it, but I am by no means an expert. But because I've had a few people ask me to do a video on this, what the Bulls' upcoming offseason will look like, which, let's be honest, this season is probably all but done, and it might start being time to look at the future, I'd figure I'd talk a little bit more in detail in today's video on how the Bulls' cap space will impact their chances in this year's free agency and going forward. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, I just wanted to mention something really quick before I get into the content. Every so often, I have some folks comment on my videos, generally people from other fan bases, who like to come in and troll or criticize the content, which I am 100% all in for. I mean, I have nothing against sports banter. I actually love it. But I feel more recently some people have been getting a little too personal and attacking others, including myself. And I've said before on this channel, I won't tolerate stuff like that, and I will block you from the channel the moment you start attacking others personally. I consider myself a nice guy, but I won't stand for stuff like that. And there have been some guys recently trying to e-flex, talking about how much money they make to me as if I don't have already a full-time job, not understanding that I do this channel for fun. Like, I will never understand people who are that insecure that feel the need to come out of nowhere to state their salary to a bunch of dudes online they don't even know, as if it makes them better than you. No, it actually makes you look like a tool and pretty damn insecure, as if somehow that's going to impress us. Money doesn't define your worth of what you place in society or, make you a better human being over others, so knock it off. There have been a few of those that have been making these type of comments recently. You know who you are. No one cares about how much money you make. Just keep it respectful in here. Keep it basketball related. Just no need for that, all right? Anyway, let's talk about the topic at hand, and that's the Bulls salary cap and how it impacts their free agency this summer. So as of right now, the Bulls have roughly $72 million in guaranteed contracts going into next season. That does not include the partial guarantees to Tomas Satoransky and Theis Young. And so as you can see, the bulk of that $72 million that is guaranteed is taken up by Nikola Vucevic and Zach Lavine. The Bulls also have Patrick Williams on the books for $7.4 million for his rookie scale contract, Troy Brown Jr. at $5.1 million, also the rookie deal of Coby White, which is highlighted in blue, that denotes a team option, which the Bulls did exercise prior to the start of the season, so that salary is now guaranteed. And I also note that the Bulls have a team option to pick up Ryan Arcidiacono's $3 million salary, which I highly doubt they will end up doing, as the Bulls really will need to free up any salary cap space that they can this offseason. Now, the Bulls also have partial guarantees on Theis Young's $14.1 million salary next season and Tomas Satoransky's $10 million, meaning the Bulls will have to decide whether they want to exercise their options and retain these guys for fully guaranteeing those salary amounts, or waiving them, and that would only partially guarantee their salary that would be on their books going into next season. So if the Bulls do decide to exercise both of their contracts, this would make the Bulls' guaranteed salary commitment total to be $96.1 million. Now, the max NBA salary cap for next season is $112.4, meaning the Bulls would roughly have around $15.9 million in actual cap space. Now, you're probably saying, well, that's not very much at all. That can't even get you someone like Lonzo Ball, who's looking to get $20 million a year next year, let alone a max player for that matter, right? Well, there is also something called the luxury tax space, which enables teams to go over their salary cap by a certain amount, and the team is subjected to paying luxury tax for going over that cap, which as fans, we don't care if the Bulls go over the luxury tax. It's not our money, but of course, when you have stingy owners, they may not want to pay a premium for that. But with the luxury cap space, the 2021 NBA luxury tax threshold will be $136.6 million. So that gives the Bulls about an additional $24.2 million in payroll to their players if they're willing to go over the salary cap, meaning they would have a total or a little over 40 million between the 15.9 million in actual cap space they have before exceeding the cap over the luxury tax and the 24.2 million luxury tax threshold. So $40 million is a good chunk of change, and mind you, that's factoring in the Bulls exercising the final years of Thaddeus Young and Sato's contracts. $40 million is enough to pay a max salary type player or a couple of quality players in the $20 million range, maybe even a fringe star or an up-and-coming player who is getting off of their rookie scale deal and becoming a restricted free agent. Now, what complicates things a little bit is, well, you also have to factor in, who are the players that are currently not under contract going into next season that are on the Bulls, and that would assume that they don't extend any of their current expiring deals, like guys like Daniel Theis. If they want to keep him, whatever contract they agree to, that salary is going to go on the books. Do they want to keep Garrett Temple? If so, that money is going to be cutting into the cap space as well. And more importantly, Lauri Markkanen, he's going to be a restricted free agent. And, him wanting, to stay on the team and being forced to match an offer sheet for another team that could be upwards of $15 million to $20 million, which I know some of you guys will say that's ridiculous. Lauri is not worth that much. And you're probably right. But be that as it may, I wouldn't be shocked if some team offers Lauri that kind of money, who is in desperate need of offense and a stretch forward to provide some spacing to their roster. The Bulls obviously can match any offer he receives since he is a restricted free agent, but will they want to, or can they afford to, understanding the cap space available to them? Denzel Valentine, Cristiano Felicio, there's no way they're getting extensions. I sure hope not anyway, so you don't have to worry about their salaries being on the books next season. And Javonte Green likely won't be extended either. So let's run a hypothetical scenario that I think most likely is going to transpire as it pertains to the offseason, or at least what I would like to see anyway. So let's start with the current players who are on the roster and have expiring contracts. I think the Bulls have to prioritize, and I think they will prioritize Daniel Theis and sign him to at a minimum, a 1-year extension. He's going to want more than the $5 million a year he's currently getting paid. Likely in the $7 to $9 million a year range, maybe even more just because he has been playing so well. But let's say, for the purposes of this video, that he's going to be getting paid $8 million for next season. That would bring the Bulls luxury tax space, and yes, I'm going to base this off of the Bulls utilizing the full amount that they have available to them and going into the luxury tax, which maybe realistically I shouldn't, since we all know the Reinsdorfs are cheap, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to assume the full luxury tax space available to them. So if you're keeping Theis on the team at $8 million, with the $40 million in space that they have, that brings the Bulls' available cap space down to $32 million. I actually don't think the Bulls will keep Satoransky, will likely waive him, meaning they'll owe him $5 million rather than the $10 million on the books. So this actually gives the Bulls $5 million back onto the books, since in this scenario that I just described, the total committed salary of $96.1 million, that assumed that they would fully guarantee Sato and Thaddeus' contract. Now, this brings back the cap space to $37 million by waiving Sato. I do actually think the Bulls will keep Thaddeus Young for the final year of his deal and make it fully guaranteed, just because of how critical he has been for this team and really has stepped it up this season in helping some of these younger guys. Now, for Garrett Temple, he's going to be 35 next season. As much as I like Temple, I think he's done wonders for this team defensively and just being a mentor for the younger players. I have to think he's likely going to want a little bit too much money, more than he's getting paid right now at $5 million. Now, if the Bulls can extend him for another $5 million, then yeah, I say go for it, because it only brings your cap space down to $32 million in that scenario, and it always is good to have a veteran voice and high IQ player, not only on the court, but also on the bench. But anything more than that, I would say it's a pass. And since I do think Temple is likely going to command more than that from another team, I would say the Bulls are probably not going to re-sign him and let him walk. So this leaves us with Lauri Markkanen as the only remaining player who is on an expiring deal with $37 million in cap space. Now, If you had asked me at the beginning of the season when Lauri was playing very well and putting up 20 points per game on good efficiency before he got injured, I would have said he's worth $20 million a year because that's kind of the going rate for someone with that kind of productivity. But after getting injured yet again, coming back from that injury a bit sluggish and getting benched as a result, I mean, it's honestly hard to justify paying Lauri Markkanen more than $12 million a year, despite his unique skill set and the fact that he's young. I would say an absolute max that you should be, willing to pay Markkanen is $15 million a year, which even that is really pushing it. As such, I think the writing is on the wall. I think his days in Chicago are likely over, and the Bulls will either do some sort of sign-in trade or they will let him walk this summer rather than matching the highest offer sheet available. Therefore, again, in this hypothetical scenario that I have concocted, the Bulls will still have $37 million in cap space, assuming they don't retain Lauri Markkanen. Now, $37 million is enough to get you a max or near max type player. Like, I'm pretty sure the Bulls could get Kyle Lauri on a short-term deal for that amount. As we all know, Lauri is a star point guard with a lot of experience, an NBA champion, great court vision, a floor general, a decent defender, and he would be that playmaking point guard that the Bulls are looking for. But do you really want to be offering Kyle Lauri that kind of money for a guy who is 35 years old and is on the decline? It's probably not worth it. Then, of course, you have guys like Mike Conley, even DeMar DeRozan that you could easily offer that kind of money to. But again, older players that will likely be on the decline soon. And do you want to lock up that kind of salary commitment for an older player that may not necessarily fit the Bulls' timeline? Of course, the most prized possession of NBA free agency this summer is going to be Kawhi Leonard. That is, of course, if he declines his player option. I mean, at $37 million in cap space, that would be enough to pay Leonard and give him the max contract that he is going to command. But I just don't see, Kawhi declining his player option unless the Clippers absolutely choke in the playoffs, which it's the Clippers, so I guess it is possible. Those are, the big names that we're talking about here. When you basically have to use that whole $37 million or close to it to bring in one of those big names. There is, of course, Chris Paul as well, but mind you, he has a player option to stay with the Suns at $44.2 million, which is just so unlikely that he would ever decline that unless the Bulls front office is able to offer him a more lucrative long-term deal. But with CP3 about to turn 36, you have to think, as great as he has been, is it worth giving him a long-term agreement knowing the timeline for this team is still relatively on the younger side? Now, the more realistic option is using that $37 million in cap space for a couple of players, right? Maybe someone that is younger, who still have some room and potential to grow, or an older player that they can get for much cheaper than some of these other guys, that are going to be commanding big salaries. Someone like a Goran Dragic that you could get for less. Dennis Schroeder, although he's likely going to want too much money, more than he's worth anyway. But another good option that you wouldn't necessarily have to pay a max salary for. Of course, there is Lonzo Ball, who is a restricted free agent. He's the main guy linked to a lot of Bulls rumors in who they're looking to pursue, given that he's younger, he's a good defender, a good playmaker, he's improved his shot quite a bit, so he fits a lot of the Bulls' needs at this time, and the Bulls can afford him. However, a lot of it just depends on how much Lonzo is going to garner in free agency. Is he worth over $20 million a year? Do you want to pay him that kind of money when you still have the potential of Coby White, especially the way that he's been playing recently? So those are all questions that have to be taken into consideration. Okay, so I know I've just been asking a lot of questions at this point. Is this player worth this much money? Does this player fit what the Bulls need, etc.? More so, I'm saying that because it's all things the Bulls are going to have to consider. But I'll tell you what I see as a likely scenario that I mentioned based on the Bulls having that $37 million in luxury cap space. Again, assuming they're willing to go into the luxury tax and assuming that they let Markkanen walk, that they waive Satoransky, that they don't extend Garrett Temple, and of course no extensions for Valentine, Felicio, and Arcidiacono. But with all of these assumptions in mind and with the salary cap space available, I would love for the Bulls to bring in Lonzo, but only if it's below $20 million. I know, I still have some doubts about his future potential and consistency in his play. So the last thing you want to do is be locked into a bad contract that hamstrings your salary cap going forward. So Lonzo, if they can get him for say $18 million, even $20 million, I can potentially live with as long as it's not anything more than that. But that would leave you with around $17 to $19 million in cap space. And I actually think it would be ideal for the Bulls to bring in 2 additional guys on top of Lonzo Ball. One being Will Barton, a solid role player and veteran who is good on defense, but also has improved greatly on offense as well. He's improved his 3-point shooting with every passing season. He's become a very impactful role player for that Denver Nuggets team, and his savvy veteran presence I think would be valuable to the Bulls. And then finally, the other guy, and I actually can't believe that I'm saying this because I was so frustrated with his play when he was with the Bulls, and mainly the fact that we traded 2 first-round picks to move up in the draft for him. But I actually think bringing a guy like Doug McDermott on a cheap deal would be valuable, and having a sharpshooter off the bench. McDermott is actually having one of the best seasons of his career with the Pacers. He's averaging 13 points per game and rebounding the best that he's done for his career. He's not shooting the 3 as well as he has throughout his career, but his overall shooting has gone up significantly. So he started utilizing more of his mid-range game and actually scoring more in the paint. He's shooting 52% from the field, and he is getting more playing time than he has ever in his career. Now the question is, with that $19 million or so left in cap space, can you make the money work by giving someone like Barton, say $12 million a year, since he's currently making 13.2? Is he going to be willing to take a pay cut to play for a worse team? Maybe, especially if it's a longer term deal, and say maybe the Nuggets would be otherwise able to offer him, and maybe he'll come and play for Arturis again. But with Barton at $12 million a year, that would give you $8 million a year for Doug McDermott, which I think is a fair salary at his age and level of productivity. And his role obviously would be reduced a bit from what he's currently getting on the Pacers. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. These moves aren't that great, especially Barton and McDermott. These are older players. How do they fit with the Bulls' timeline? Well, sure, you guys, notice, but Vooch is 30 years old, going to be 31 next season. Barton is 30 and McDermott is 29. So yes, they are older, but it gives you more experience. It fast tracks the timeline a bit to add some solid role players to round out the team, to keep Zach Lavine interested in wanting to stay and play with this team. And of course, you're adding Lonzo Ball, who, I'm still not that big of a fan of, but the more that I look at it, he does fit a big need for the Bulls in that point guard position that has great court vision and has a knack for running an offense and can also play great defense. And he's much younger than some of these other more experienced point guards who will be available in free agency, but are obviously going to command a lot more money. So with these 3 added players, you bring in defense and playmaking with Lonzo Ball, veteran experience and leadership, as well as solid defense and offense from Will Barton, and a sharpshooter off the bench at the 3 or 4 in Doug McDermott, who can help you spread the floor further. So anyway, I know this is all hypothetical. I really wanted to do this video more so to show the Bulls salary cap situation, what it will look like going into the offseason, and what will be available to them and what is realistically possible. Because yes, the Bulls do have a good amount of cap flexibility, but after trading for Vucevic and now owning his contract, which is still a good contract for someone of his caliber, but now having that on the books for the next 2 seasons, it will limit their space a bit. So what was once looking like a summer where the Bulls would have 2 max contract spots available to them is now really just 1, and even then that limits your availability to bring in some other role players. Mind you, this also assumes that the Bulls do not land in the top 4 to keep their draft pick. Otherwise, they're going to have to make space available for that rookie contract for the lottery pick. Also, keep in mind, I am by no means an expert in the field of the NBA salary cap, and I'm sure there will be a lot of things that I miss as it pertains to exceptions, stretch provisions, etc. So before you go and criticize in the comments about all the things I missed, I'm just throwing that out there as a disclaimer. Please let me know if there is anything that I did miss, as long as you're able to keep it respectful, of course. No need to hurl insults for no reason. I seriously will never understand that in this day where people try to act tough behind a keyboard. Anyway, I know this video is incredibly long, so apologies for that. Thanks for sticking around until the end. Let me know what you guys think, though. Who would you want the Bulls to pursue this upcoming offseason or prioritize and keeping around on the team? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.